Okay, so we are on the home stretch. We are just going to do a quick refresh on his oil pan before we go ahead and slap it on the engine. This oil pan was heavily modified already. We've put the high octane sump on the bottom. It was welded in house, and then we had it vapor honed to match the finishes as close as possible. So next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do all new hardware. We're going to install just a Tomei baffle plate that goes on top of the high octane kit. And then new plugs, new seals. We do have the other seals for this side as well. We'll do those. And then we'll clean it up after we're finished with that. And then we'll go ahead and put on the engine. Okay, so first thing we're going to do with the oil pan modification, just carrying on, we're going to drill the drain holes that come from the back of the sump to the front of the sump here. You either can remove this lovely crossover tube for the axle, which takes hours and hours of work, and all new seals and patience, I guess. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and use a long drill bit, and we're going to get it from the back side here. And we're just going to drill these holes out to the full size. This just increases the drain capacity of this part of the oil pan. So you can see in the hole down there, we basically just increased the drain size. We're going to do that for all 5 of them. This basically just allows any trapped oil that's back here to get down there faster under hard cornering or heavy G-forces. A little bit of oil does get trapped in there. It'd be nice to get it down into the sump. Okay, once we've had those drilled out here, we're just going to go take a bit of sandpaper and just clean up the exit holes of the drill bit. Okay, now that we've drilled our holes, we've vacuumed out all the loose debris that we could get out of it so we don't have to blow it around the shop. We're going to go ahead now, we're going to do our tear down here and begin our re-clean and seal. Okay, so we got the oil pan broken down. A couple things to note when you get it apart, if you're going this far into it just to replace seals or whatever. This little gasket here is actually a shim. This is pretty much a shim that sets your preload on the carrier bearing for the differential. We're taking it this far down just basically because we want to replace the seals. We want to clean out any media that might be left in there from when we had the oil pan blasted. And then as well as just have a good look at it. There was nothing wrong with this diff when we went ahead with this project, so it doesn't hurt to just get in there and clean it up. One thing on this side as well, O-ring, and then again another shim. This just sets your distance, so this spline lines up in the center of the carrier. Last thing we have to do here is the pinion bearing. This is going to be a little more tricky because the crush sleeve for the pinion itself is out of production. So what we're probably going to end up doing is marking it, popping off just the carrier companion flange, and then we're going to go ahead and slam our new seal in there, and then we'll mark it, set it back to where it was, and then we'll check it, make sure it still has the same bearing preload, and then we'll continue the reassembly and cleaning. Okay, so we got the oil pan broken all the way down now. There was a bit of tightness in the pinion bearing, so I suspected there might be a little bit of media in there just from the blasting. There was in there. We do have this pinion bearing seal anyways, so we're going to take it apart to begin with, but this is what we found. A couple things to note inside the pinion bearing. Again, this is the crush sleeve. This basically provides the tension on the bearings. It allows the nut to be tight without forcing the bearings to be too preloaded, I guess. So we're going to make sure that we set that up again. The crush sleeve is no longer available, so we'll have to be careful when we reassemble it, just to be able to reuse that. This is another component that's usually in a differential. Just going to be your shim spacer. This is going to set the depth of the pinion from the ring gear. We're not going to go in too much detail with this, but when we get to that step and reassemble it to check our backlash, we'll mention this one again. This diff is not having anything changed. We're just replacing seals. So there's probably no need to even replace this. As it was coming apart, it was good anyways. So what we're going to do now that we have it all apart, we're going to go ahead, we're going to pressure wash the outside, get it nice and clean, and then we'll make sure we get rid of all the media that was in there, and then we'll do our final assembly and get this thing back together. There is one more seal just on the outside here. This is just another seal on the inside of the oil pan that you can't access without removing this side shaft. This just seals on the end of the extension shaft that goes through the oil pan. So we'll be removing that and replacing that as well. Okay, so we finished cleaning up the oil pan here. We removed all the seals from all the sides. We removed the differential assembly, pinion bearing, we removed the side shaft. Now we're going to install the Tomei baffle plate. We'll clean this up, we'll put the spacer in. This is only one portion of this. Because we have the high octane sump on this engine, the lower section does not get installed. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to clean this up, we're going to install that, and then we're going to put on the engine before we assemble the diff. It'll make it a little bit easier to work with as far as torquing things down and hammering the seals. Sliding around the bench is not exactly the most comfortable, so we'll do that first. So this is kind of a mix and match of two different components, the Tomei baffle plate and the high octane sump. The baffle plate here is just going to go on top of the existing sump that we've welded on. That is one piece. Okay, so we got 3 of the Tomei baffle plate bolts. We got 2 new M6 bolts just for the other 2 bolt holes. The sump requires you to cut off a portion of this side here, so this one will not have a bolt in it. And then we'll go ahead and torque those down. 6 to 7 foot-pounds again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to clean the oil pan sealing surface now. The high octane sump requires you to install the oil pan from the bottom. The trap doors can flip up and stay open if you do install it upside down. So we're just going to, for the safety's sake, just going to install it from the bottom. So I'm going to flip the engine, clean it off, and then we're going to clean the oil pan, and then we'll bolt that on. One thing that goes along with the high octane sump is the oil pickup tube modification. So we've extended it here, and then we've moved the strainer support. Most oil sump manufacturers recommend that you do support the strainer because it can crack off under high load. So we always make sure we do that. We've got it installed and torqued down here, so we're just going to clean the surface off now and then install the oil pan. Okay, so just a bit of information before we flip this over and seal the oil pan. This front corner here, I think we talked about this before, this area on the oil pan. So this area on the oil pan here, this corner, the block isn't really clear in the area that you kind of silicone. So if you happen to run silicone a little too far this way and you miss this corner, this area is prone to leaking. So be careful in this corner here as well as up here in this area. This whole corner kind of has a bit of a weird shape to it. So you can at times incorrectly place the silicone down and then it can leak. So what we're going to do now is go ahead, first step, we're going to install the studs in the oil pan, or sorry, in the block. They're going to go in this area here because on the block side, or on the oil pan side, you cannot get the longer bolt into the hole. If you have a sump, or even with the factory sump, you can't get the bolt into the hole. So they come up with a different design so you can work with it. So what we're going to do, we're just going to tighten these 4 studs into the block. Now what we're going to do is just use a couple of jam nuts, just like we did with the cam cap bolts, so we can torque down the stud, just so it's not a pain to get them out, or if they do back out, you have to loosen it off later. And tighten them together. Just going to torque it down to about 20-25 foot-pounds, just so they don't back out if you do have to loosen this off at a later date. And then just repeat the same steps to the other 4. Okay, once you got those studs tightened down, just make sure you clean off the pan again. We're going to want to make sure that the surface is nice and clean, just like with anything else we've been sealing. One area you do have to do a bit of drilling before you clean your oil pan is just right here. This bolt becomes M8 when they do go to install the brace on the block. so that has to be drilled out. Now we're going to put the engine back over, and then we'll place our silicone onto the oil pan and install it to the engine. Okay, now we've got the silicone placed onto the oil pan, we're going to go ahead and place it on the block. 4 gold ones.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we place the oil pan onto the block from the bottom side. Next up is going to be just these fine thread bolts here. These are the ones that thread into the bolt or into the oil pan where the diff is. These bolt holes do go all the way through into the diff housing, so you will need to put a little bit of sealant onto the end of the bolt just to make sure you don't have any sort of leaking around the perimeter. Not common, but it does happen. So before you install these ones, just go ahead and a little bit of silicone, thread in the block. We're going to repeat that for all 5 of them on this side, and then we'll tighten them all down. Okay, so once you've threaded in all the bolts into the oil pan loosely by hand, you can start going around tightening them. For hand tighten, it's not huge as the torque sequence is crisscross. So just go around, snug them all up, and then we'll come back and we'll torque them all down. Okay, now that we've got the oil pan on, first thing we're going to do now is go ahead and torque down the bolts. The sequence is just going to be crisscross pattern, starting in the middle, working your way out, just like anything else. The bigger bolts, the larger ones, are going to be 31 foot-pounds. A couple of them you can't torque down unless you have really, really short Allen keys. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hand tighten those ones as snug as possible, and then we'll start torquing the ones around it. Okay, once you've torqued on all the big ones, the little ones are just going to be 6 to 7 foot-pounds, just like any M6 hardware that we've been working with. And then there's just one more M8 bolt near the front left here that just needs to be torqued to 18 foot-pounds, and then you're done.